Hey, what is up? I am back with the X1 today, and this is of course the ATK X1, which is also known as the Viper at home, but we're going to bring it up against the actual Viper V3 Pro. And let me know in the comments if you want a exclusive video on the Viper V3 Pro at home. Today I'm just going to do a comparison between the X1 and the Viper V3 just to let you know what's up and the differences between these two mice. First up, they look almost identical, but there are some subtle differences. We'll start with the obvious differences. The first thing is the white on the X1 is different to the white on the Viper V3 Pro. The white on the X1 is a much warmer hue and the Viper has a cooler hue. So that's the first difference. The second difference are the skates. They're both PTFEs, but the Viper has more speed than the VXE X1. You can clearly see on the spin test, it is going to spin a lot smoother and a lot further than the X1. This is the X1, by the way. This is the Viper. So you can clearly see the Viper V3 Pro is way smoother, and that's attributed to the skates. Of course, it's the only thing in contact with the pad. What are the other differences? Well, the X1 has Bluetooth 2.4 switch on top and then Bluetooth at the bottom, while the Viper V3 Pro only has the DPI button over here. Also, the X1 comes with a 1K dongle and an 8K dongle, while the Viper V3 only comes with a hyperpolling dongle, which is also serves as an 8K or a 1K. But what's the difference here? Who cares? They both do the same thing. Well, the X1, it means a little bit of extra portability. It means you can leave your 8K dongle at home and you can bring the 1K dongle with you on the go. A little bit, I would give it a little bit of advantage, and of course the Bluetooth also gives it a little bit of an advantage. Not a great advantage, but you know, it's something to consider if you are ultra portable or mobile. There's also some minor differences that a lot of people don't pick up. The length of the Viper V3 and the X1 is kind of the same, 127mm, but you will notice that the Viper V3 has a little bit of overhang on the M1 and M2 buttons, while the ATK buttons on the M1 and M2, you can see they're kind of flush with the body. Nothing stopping my fingers from rolling across, while on the Viper you can see that the overhang is a little bit longer. Also, the sensor on the Viper V3 Pro is actually 2.4mm higher than the sensor on the X1 ATK. So a little bit higher sensor, ATK is a little bit lower, only by 2.4mm, by the way, just so you know what 2.4mm looks like. And also the M1 and M2 buttons look like they are in the same location, but the length of the buttons is about 4mm longer on the Viper. You can clearly see the Viper has bigger, longer buttons. Well, not wider, but longer buttons. There you go. Looks about that much. So it is that much longer. The side buttons on the Viper are also 5mm further back, so they look like they're positioned on the same place because, you know, the end of the button kind of like intersects between the two side buttons. They both look like the same, but you can clearly see it is further back on the Viper. Now in the hand, I can show you that on the Viper, this is where my thumb rests, and that's how I actuate the front and back, forward and reverse buttons, while on the ATK, that's where my thumb rests, and that's how I actuate the forward and reverse buttons. Even though it's 5mm difference, sounds like a lot, but when you're actually using it, it's not that difficult. The X1 side buttons are further forward. That's what I'm trying to get to. The scroll wheel itself on the Viper is further back than the X1, and it is further back by 2.35 millimeters, that much. So not much difference at all, but there is a little bit of difference. Also the side buttons, if I want to show you the side profile here, if I can get closer to you guys and if the camera will focus, these buttons are kind of flat and flush to the body shape, while the X1 buttons are more of an ergonomic. When I say ergonomic, I mean they are rounder this way. They are shaped this way, while the Viper side buttons are flat. So these are kind of flat. Even the edges are sticking out a little bit. These are rounded that way. So you get a different feel when your thumb is rolling up towards them. This one is a lot rounder. I won't say either is better or worse. They're just different. It's not a problem for me at all. So anyway, those are the differences. The grip width is exactly the same, 58.11. I measured it at the sensor. So where your thumb rests, that's 58.11. Where your thumb rests, that's about 58.11. Which is our segue to the next segment, the grip feel. In the hand, they are both indistinguishable from each other. Every curve feels like they are in the same place, and the plastic surface and coating feels the same. In a blind test, the only hardly noticeable giveaway is the feel of the side buttons. If you didn't actuate the side buttons, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an X1 and a Viper V3 Pro. The X1 feels rounded and thinner, while the Viper feels wide and fat, if that makes any sense. The scroll wheel on the Viper feels a little bit taller. As I mentioned earlier, the coating is identical. The biggest difference between the two is the stability of the M1 and M2. M1 and M2 on the Viper, rock solid. This isn't going anywhere. The X1, you can see there's a little bit of loosey-goosey there, but this does not affect any kind of performance. The click feel, I also feel, is like very different. To put it plainly, the Viper feels nicer to click, but the X1 isn't too far behind. It is a little bit stiffer compared to the Viper. The Viper is definitely softer, but the X1 sounds nicer to click. You can clearly hear it here. It is a lot nicer in real life as well. The Viper feels nicer to click, but it sounds not as nice as the X1. I mean, I'm being nitpicky here. They're both excellent, they're both great. But if I had a choice, I want the click feel of the Viper V3 and I want the sound of the X1. The tensioning on the Viper is perfect, while the X1 isn't bad in any way, but it shares the same feel as the VXE R1 Pro or Pro Maxes, where the tensioning is like, gives you kind of like a bouncy feel. I've mentioned this before, and I think this can be directly attributed to the design and mounting system of the buttons that VGN, VXE and ATK use in their factory. It's by no means worse, but if I had to choose, I would prefer the Viper click feel. In the acoustics department, however, the X1 is just outright better, as I mentioned, and I think it is just the Omron Opticals doing their thing with that signature sound. I'm quite fond of nowadays. I think a lot of people also like the Omron Opticals. I think it started with the Sprime PM1, and then they carried forward with the Sora V2 and now the ATKs. I can clearly hear the Viper V3 not as nice as the Omrons on the X1. In terms of performance, I found both of them just as good as each other. I did have some issues with the DPI deviation on my 8K dongle on the X1. I mentioned the only notable performance is the scroll wheel acoustics, but like I mentioned, the buttons also had a difference. But the scroll wheel, if you hear on the right Razer, it is actually pretty silent. I'm bringing aggressive here, so you might hear it because I'm aggressive, but overall it's pretty silent. The X1 is silent going down, but going up it makes a much louder noise. I'm sure you can hear it. I have the mic here, so a different sound going down makes a racket going up. How about value for money then? And I think that's what everybody wants to know. The Viper V3 Pro costs 3 times more than the ATK F1. That's $100 difference. $100 more than the X1. Is it better than the X1? Overall, I would say yes, it definitely is better than the X1. Is it $100 better than the X1? Hell no. It is better by the X1 by $30. That's just me being truthful. I have never owned any Razer product that lasted longer than 18 months before going to an RMA program. That's the Return Merchandise Authorization Program. I've had the Black Widow keyboard replaced 6 times, and the Death Adder mouse also 6 times. This is my 6th Death Adder mouse before I call it quits. I had the Razer Catcherias, or whatever they call it, headset. It lasted 3 sessions and I had to have it refunded. So I have low confidence in a Razer product that is going to be robust, and this is based on my history with the product. Of course, that was like many years ago. I think my last new Death Adder mouse was in probably 2019 or maybe 2020. So I don't know about the new Razers. They could have improved their durability. I don't know. It is true that I'm a heavy user, 10 plus hours a day, but I am also very gentle and I have a very light grip. I keep my peripherals and my environment religiously clean and dust free. The X1 is filthy because I'm testing it right now. I don't want to clean it for the next 2-3 weeks before I finish my review. So it is a little bit filthy, but other than that, my environment is always clean. So if anything, all my peripherals and mouse and keyboard should last longer and not break down exactly a year and a half later. I'm not a Razer hater. In fact, I love Razer very much when they are working as intended. If I was considering a Viper V3 Pro, I would seriously take a look at the X1 Pro and save that extra $100 to go buy something else, or maybe even buy 2 X1s just to have one in reserve. It's worth instead of getting a Viper. But if money is not an issue, you don't mind spending $159, then go ahead, get the Viper. You're not going to go wrong with it. How long will it last? 18 months or more? I don't know. But if you can afford a Razer 159 Viper V3 Pro, I don't think you care if it survives 18 months or not. But anyway, that's my video. Hope you found some useful information, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.